Happy Veterans Day, everybody. This is going to be a little break from what I have been doing, um, and that is doing my walk through the Bible. But today is a day to pause, recognize veterans who served our country for various reasons and at various times. And I um, always take a moment in those cases to um, just be thankful, not necessarily reach out and thank, but be thankful for the folks who served with me. I am a veteran. I joined in early 2001 when I was 17, still in high school. I joined the Army National Guard for Virginia, and I stayed until spring of 2009. Um, I did a tour in Iraq, and there were various points in my experience that that affected my Christian faith and things that happened along the way. So I figured do something a little relaxed. Not that my channel is anything close to being formal, but be a little bit more relaxed and talk about the things that have happened in my military career that affected my faith. Because I want to say the the things that happened along the way, right before I left for basic training, um, all the way to serving overseas, deeply affected and deeply influenced the faith trajectory I had, and I kind of wanted to share that because that's always a cool story. We should always share that. So, in honor of Veterans Day, I'm going to drink a little bit of whiskey. In respect and thanks to the folks I served with, the folks that came before me, the folks that came after me. Thanks to you guys. Appreciate it. Now, getting into things. Um, know the story. Been a Christian all my life. Never really wavered in my faith in those aspects. But growing up in church and coming up that way, um, perhaps I was a singular case, or perhaps it was something more common to folks. But I didn't take my faith very seriously. I was still, I just turned 18. Where it's the summer of 2001. September 11th had not yet happened. It was getting ready to happen. I want to say it was late summer. And I was going down towards the Hampton Roads area to hang out with some friends, spend some time with them before I left because I was going off for training. I didn't know when I was going to be coming back. Um, and that's about the time when you've graduated from high school, and the folks you're around are graduating from high school, and everybody's kind of going their separate ways. So I was taking a trip down there to see some friends, and one of the things, and what happened to me along the way, I was driving my dad's Thunderbird, and I had a terrible, terrible habit of overheating, and it did that to me then. So I'm driving down the interstate at first. Starts to overheat, so I get off at the next exit, which puts me, in the middle of nowhere, really ends up, and that's where I end up breaking down. Break down on this old country road, one lane. Never been on this road before in my life, and I got out to just find somebody's house. Now this is back in the days when cell phones were still relatively new. And I didn't have it, and reception was an iffy thing, especially the further out into the sticks you went. Um, but I couldn't get a signal, and I decided, because these were still these times where you can go up to people's houses, and it's still the area of the country where you can go up to people's houses. to go look for help. So the folks closest to me ended up being divine intervention, is the only way I could put it. I went to their house and asked if I could borrow their phone, let them know that I'd broken down, and they were quite accommodating. They let me use their phone, called my dad. He needed to get his tools because, Dad fixes everything. Dad fixes everything himself. Dad was getting his tools and he was going to drive out to see me. It was going to take him probably the better part of an hour, hour and a half to get out to me. Because also we had to establish where exactly I was, and that took a little bit of time too. Again, no GPS at this point. This is 2001. MapQuest was never something that you could really depend on. It was something that we all knew about, and that was what we had to use. But that was pretty much it. And it was not MapQuest was never a dependable or reliable source, at least if you ask me. So finally was able to establish with my dad where I was, and he said he was on his way. So in the meantime, I'm stuck here with these folks, and they're older folks, and they start talking to me and asking me about my, the topic of faith came up, and they said, are you a Christian? I said, yeah, I've been a Christian all my life. I was baptized, when I was a teenager, and I believe in Jesus. And then, they asked me, but do you really understand being a Christian? And I thought it was kind of patronizing at first. I'm a teenager still, remember, so I think I know everything, and I think that anybody who questions how much I know about things is is insulting my intelligence. It's like, yeah, no, I get it. You're kind of smiling and nodding at the things, and he goes, I don't think you're taking me seriously here, son. And then they started to talk to me about the true power of faith and the seriousness of faith, and how it is and they impressed upon me that importance, and they stuck with me the entire time, talking to me about God and praying and doing all sorts of things to really get my mind right. And it wasn't like I was at a point of crisis in my life. I wasn't apprehensive about going into the military. I wasn't I didn't feel like I was lost. I wasn't having any type of significant emotional event. I was a little irritated to get to see my friends that day, but that was pretty much it. Just goes, I have to go out and see them at another time. And so I wasn't really at a point where I was looking for, I was looking for a sign from God for anything. But when these folks started talking to me, it really made me realize how much I was missing out of my faith, and how much I was keeping God at arm's length, which is something we tend to do it from time to time. But at this point in my life, he had been at arm's length for years, and it really just changed my whole perspective on things. They gave me their address, asked me to write them letters, let them know how I was doing when I did ship out for basic training. And I agreed to do so. Dad came up, we got the car running, was able to limp it back home, and I never saw him again. Never saw these people again. But the lessons that they taught me about loving Jesus, actively loving Jesus, actively understanding his love for us and his expectations of us, really took root, and it really had my attention. So that set everything up, and like I said, this is late summer, right around the corner. September 11th happens right then. Now, if you weren't alive for September 11th, it's a difficult thing to describe how everything was, because we really haven't had a moment similar to really compare it to. But at the same time, it didn't affect me so deeply where I felt I was lost. I was still kind of in, I was still, I guess, absorbing everything that I'd been talked to from that meeting. It really, like I said, it deeply affected me. And I say that with that moment that I stayed with those people, was the turning point in my faith. It was the part. It was the point where I started taking being a Christian seriously, and it became not just something I was, but my identity. And September 11th happened, and the next month I'm shipping for basic training. So there's a lot of uncertainty. A lot of things are going on. I went to Fort Knox. We go in there. It's dog. We get everybody gets taken on the bus. They put dogs, around our bags, around us, back on the bus, making sure everybody wasn't, nobody was bringing any terroristic materials, and everything was at a high tempo there because there was a lot of uncertainty everywhere in the country, and the military was it was a big thing because we've been attacked. So the last time we'd had an attack like that, we ended up going to a world war, or we ended up getting sucked into a world war, and so there was a lot of military readiness at that point. And we were just coming off the Clinton years, and politics aside, whether you thought he was a great president or not, the military shrank at that point, and so our footing and militarily was off. So, but we're in basic training, and I meet a couple of folks, and we talk about, and you just naturally meet with folks, and you listen to what they talk about and how they talk about things, and the topic of God comes up oftentimes, especially when you're talking about two people who both share the same faith. And I met some of those people, and one of the things when we were in reception, now reception in basic training is basically your holding area. When you get into basic training, you're getting all your paperwork set up. They're waiting for the next cycle of recruits to start up, the next class of recruits to start, and you end up meeting a lot of the people that you're going to be going into basic training with. You don't go into basic training with all of them, but the vast majority with them, you're gonna see them. Or at least that's how it was for me. And so, we established this group of folks who were believers, who were Christians, and folks who were interested. Didn't I see so much interest at that point? But this is one of those things where you're going through a significant emotional event. You're holding tightly onto yourself from anything. You want to look out for your buddy, but you're not really doing any extraneous outreach. It's like, hey, if somebody's got a question, you'll talk to them about it. So we do finally, our basic training class starts up, and there's a couple of us, periodically who would meet after lights out at the end of our barracks hut room to do a little bit of Bible study and talk about things. And there was a moment of closeness with that because a lot of these folks were total strangers to me, and I never really got to know them as much as I wanted to. But at the beginning, we're just talking and supporting each other and reading scripture, and it was very, very wholesome to me. It was kind of a touchstone. Jesus was a touchstone for me when I was away from home, really for the first time in my life, under a significant amount of stress for what an 18-year-old is going to be, exposed to, and these were people that I was strangers with. I never really lived around people that I'd never known before. I grew up out in mostly in the country where you're pretty isolated. Didn't grow up in a neighborhood. Didn't grow up in the city. No cul-de-sac. All the friends that I had over were never neighbors. They were always people that I knew from school who their parents would come drop me off, or drop my friend off, or I would go to their house. So I was never around a lot of people I didn't know, and so it's a new experience. It's a whole new experience. It's the Army is a culture shock. You've got people from all over the country and out of the country in many cases, coming together, and you're all trying to figure everything out. So Jesus and my faith were a touchstone for me, and I think that part of the reason why basic training did seem to come not so difficult was because I had that grounding and I had that faith in myself and in God that I was going to get through things. It was a lot of prayer, up a lot of nights. I was thinking about my brother. He was going to be joining. He was behind me in age. He's my little brother. He was going to be joining the Marines. That was his plan. And you know, sitting there thinking to myself, man, this is a very real situation that we're in, and you know, praying for our safety, praying specifically for his, and like I said, it really was. I was really maturing in my faith. So, get out of basic training. Next thing you do is you go to your technical school where you learn the trade for your job in the military. We call it an MOS. And so I was at Fort Eustis, not too far from home, and there were some folks who had went to basic training with, who came with us or came with me, and one of them ended up being my best friend at that time, and he was just an awesome guy, same age as me. He was from Oregon, and this man, and I call him I say a man because you know that's what we legally were at the time. Knew the Bible inside and out, confident in his faith, great about it, charismatic guy, and you know, I was just you know deeply impressed with his friendship and his knowledge of Christ, and I was it felt odd to me that he gravitated to me as friendships, because I never found myself. I was never a popular kid in school. I had zero confidence making friends. I was a smart aleck. I was a scrawny. I was tall, but I was very thin, and I was almost too light. I was almost too skinny to go to even ship for basic training. But so I was very thin and a smart mouth, and I didn't know how to make friends. And yet here's this guy who everybody seems to like, and he wants to hang out with me, and but what I got out of him was confidence and faith, and he did not care what other people thought about his beliefs, and he would share it to you whatever, no matter what. He could talk to anybody about it, and it was, like I said, so impressive, so mature spiritually, so educated spiritually, and talking about Jesus came easily to him, and he didn't compromise his beliefs. And when many of them I shared, but was afraid to share them because maybe they weren't popular beliefs. But he would share them, and he didn't care. He didn't care if anybody had a problem with it. That's on you. And that showed me that you can be that way. You can be friendly. You can be set in your principles at the same time. I didn't feel like I captured the ability to do it, but he was a great example. And to this day, again, while the time with my car broken down was the turning point for my faith. It was this meeting this guy in AIT and talking to him and learning from him, that also, because he was a peer, he was somebody at the same age as me. We were going through the same things. We were from literally opposite ends of the country. Very different backgrounds in that respect. But also at the same time, we shared a love for mechanics. We shared a love for being out in the outdoors, growing up, being kind of on our own, and it was great. Like I said, he was my best friend, and when we went our separate ways, he was in the 101st, so he ships out for Fort Campbell. I'm in the National Guard, so I basically go back home. And we kept in touch for a little while. I actually went out and visited him, but and then the last time I heard I had any communication with him was I was in Iraq, and I'd emailed him a couple of times, and I haven't heard from him since. And it's a very big loss. I'd love to run into him and see how he's doing. But this, the way things have it, hasn't happened yet. So those were big things that happened to me during my service time. I was enlisted when I had the first experience that I shared, and then I was in training for the second experience, and then so that takes us to 2002, and then in 2005 we ship for basic training, and or not basic training. We get ready to ship to go to Iraq. And when we get to Iraq, it's not what I was expecting. I was expecting rolling dunes and this big wide desert. And it really wasn't that. That's like Saudi Arabia. Iraq is just rocks and dirt, and it looks like it used to be kind of a pretty place to be. And then you would see the sunset in the distance, very pretty, very scenic, much like if you go anywhere where you get a good view of the sun. And then as the sun is setting, it's setting on just garbage. It's not a place that was very tidy. I think it's a war-torn area at that point. It had been when 2005, we'd been in there for 2 years, and we're walking. And one of the things that stuck with me, because Iraq used to be Babylon, and so there are places, or there are times in the Bible where Babylon is mentioned, and it is a very significant nation throughout biblical tales, biblical accounts. It's the thing that struck me was because where we were at, we were not far from a water source, and so there was a very good chance that there was some sort of, if not civilization there at some point during biblical times, but at least travel. And it struck me as odd that I could be, while I was walking from point A to point B, I could be walking on the same ground that maybe some of the people I looked up to in my readings of the Bible were walking, a couple thousand years or more before me. That deeply affected me again, because I guess it puts a bit of proximity there, and I felt like I just felt more closer to God because of that. And maybe these are just me making these connections on my own, or maybe God deliberately put me in those situations because He wanted me to mature in those ways. It doesn't matter to me. Doesn't matter to me one way or another. That's when I talk about the Bible. We talk about creation and how was the earth created? How was mankind put on the planet? Are we talking about an old earth with intelligent design? Are we talking about young earth, like young earth creationists believe? The Adam and Eve account, Noah's Ark account that I just finished reading through here. These are things that are good to study, because you're getting something out of it. But whether it's metaphorical or literal, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all, because it doesn't change the fact that God did it, and whether He did it in a way that we can all understand as real and tangible, or if it did it in a way that we had to understand it through telling a tale that makes it allegorical. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because at the end, he's the source of it. And that's the same thing here. Some people believe that God is very hands-on. Some people believe he's hands-off. I used to believe that God was a very hands-off God once once the accounts in Revelation are told, and Christianity tends to split up. That's changed a lot because of some of the things that have happened in my life since, and I've gotten older and maybe wiser, maybe more attentive to it. But I definitely feel like God has a much stronger hand in our daily lives than I was comfortable with at that point, or that I believed He did at that point, and it. So that's the thing. Whether I drew those connections myself, or God put me in there to make those connections, doesn't matter. What matters is that proximity, that me putting myself in those shoes, and just considering the fact that I was treading on ground that had been walked on before um, by folks that God had blessed and had done great deeds. Um, it meant a lot to me, and I think that's really what set me on the pace where I was now. Now, at the time, I wasn't attending church. I wasn't attending church because I had been going to a church that was not a healthy place to grow spiritually, and that a lot of folks my age had walked away from church, and some of them had walked away from the faith altogether. And and so I didn't really think that my faith had anything to do with church. Right before I left, Right before I had left to go to Iraq, I'd been invited to a small group by a friend of mine, and I had connected with those folks, and they belonged to a different church than I'd been going to, and one of the things that I'd always thought, even to this day, because it feeds me spiritually the best, is fellowship. And I met folks my age who were, again, they were very similar to my friend in that I had in Fort Eustis, but not quite as knowledgeable, and so it was a little bit more relatable in that aspect, because it was people who were growing in their faith, similarly to me. Now, they were still going to a church, and they'd invited me, and I'd gone a couple of times, but I hadn't become a member. And when I got back from Iraq, I started dating my wife. She wasn't my wife at the time, obviously. Started dating my wife, and got a new job. I got out of the National Guard shortly thereafter, and I went to and then we moved out of the area. And life was comfortable. Life was comfortable. I was comfortable in my faith, but I didn't feel like I needed a church to determine what I needed. And but when me and my wife had our first kid, we decided we were going to move back to my hometown, because the school systems are awesome. Once we got settled in our new house, the thing I wanted to do was go back to this church. I wanted my son to grow up in a church, because I wanted him to experience I wanted him to experience God at a young age and get that influence. And he wasn't going to do that sitting at home on Sundays. So I joined the church, and I reached out to my friend who I'd been going to small group with before that, and he was still around. And he had a family of his own, and invited me back out there, and I'm still going there to this day. Well established, I feel. I've made several friends there, and it's a home away from home. That's really only 10 minutes from my house, so. But still, it's a home away from home. It's a place I love. But all of this, again, this all revolves around, or that time when I was very impressionable, from 18 to 31. went through my whole 20s. That whole time period, I I had my maturing with my faith, and it just the military seemed to be in the background, and um, that's just one of the things that sticks with me a lot. Um, I don't talk about my military experience all that much. I talk about kind of the ancillary things, and everybody's got basic training stories and everything. I don't talk about the military experience. I was glad I joined, glad I did what I did, and glad I got the experiences. Uh, and I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for some of the opportunities. VA loan, used it. Um, had uh, get a veterans card. Went out and got a free meal at O'Charlie's. I took my father-in-law, who's a Vietnam veteran. Me and him took the kids out. Met my wife there, and me and him had our free meals, and he got a boatload of chicken tenders. But when I think about my service, I always think about God. I always think about the influences that were going on while I was in and while I was serving. So I thought that was appropriate. Since it was Veterans Day, I usually take the day off. I didn't today, but um, I felt like you know felt like a good time to kind of just discuss things. It's not strong. It just went down the wrong pipe. um, I thought it was a good time to reflect on that. Now I restarted. I did something that I didn't want to do because I do want to start promoting this channel more. I went ahead and got on Facebook, created a profile, connected with people I know, and created a page for this channel to grow influence. And hopefully, by posting across YouTube and Facebook, I'll get a community of folks, not just people who might come through here randomly, but people I know, or people that know people that I know who see this, who see my streams pop up, and they're shared. But if you come across this, I want to hear from you. Maybe if you're a veteran, you can share some stories about how God was around during your service. What your thoughts on service are. I'm not going to go through in depth. I got to save something for next Veterans Day, right? Maybe discuss the moral complexities that come with military service, specifically the involvement of combat and how that affects our beliefs, or how, how that works with our beliefs, because there's a significant portion of folks who believe that military services is against against the tenets of God, or specifically through Jesus Christ. And I don't think that's correct, but I'm also not entirely convinced that it's not. So I do respect that outlook, even if I don't necessarily share it. That's one of the things. If you are going to castigate somebody for their faith, you better have a very good spiritual reason that is not ambiguous or arguable to go after them about it. Because, again, the Word of God is infallible, but the reading of the Word is often messed up by user error. And so we need to be careful in how we treat other people and their interpretations, and what they get out of the Bible, and discover exactly how, or make sure that we're positive in our belief before we go after others. So anyway, I think that wraps things up well enough. Like I said, you see this you see this stream, you like it, subscribe to it, leave a comment, put a notification up, and come back for more, because we're going to continue to go through the Bible. We're going to wrap up. We'll probably not do another reading tomorrow. I think what we'll do is a wrap up of basically where we're at in Genesis, just to kind of touch and review what I've read and what I've reacted to, and then I guess either going into the weekend or heading into Monday, depending on how I feel. We'll start back up again and find out what happens after Noah leaves the ark. In the meantime, y'all, stay safe. God bless you all. And if you need anything, leave a comment below. God bless y'all. Have a happy